Hi, thanks for joining us for the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South. I'm Chris Cooper. Need a perennial with large green leaves? Try a hosta. Today we will look at some varieties and how to take care of them. Also, it's time to start planting. We're going to talk about how to get your soil ready. That's just ahead on the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South.
Production funding for the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South is provided by the WKNO Production Fund, the WKNO Endowment Fund, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome to the Family Plot. I'm Chris Cooper. Joining me today is Jim Crowder. Jim is a horticulturist at the Memphis Botanic Garden, and Mr. D is here with us.
Howdy.
Thanks for joining us.
Glad to do it.
Mr. Jim, we're glad to have you here today.
Thank you.
We have a lot of hostas on the table. Can you tell us a little bit about hostas?
By jingy, I can. Yes, I can. Okay. Well, first thing, hostas prefer shade. All of them prefer shade. There are some that are quite sun tolerant, but even by the end of August, even those look a little ratty. So to have your best looking hostas, shade is always the best option.
Okay.
And the nice thing about them is they'll tolerate extremely dry shade right up on the trunk of an old tree, and they'll make their own space and come back year after year, where a lot of plants just won't take the competition from the tree. So they're great plants for dry, shady areas. A lot of good plants to go with them, but there's so much variation in them too, with either variegated yellow or variegated white, whether the yellow's in the center or on the edge, the heights, the flower color. Some are purple, some are white. There's one called Aphrodite that's a double white that's very fragrant. Okay. So there's a wide range of options with them. And so we brought a few here just to give people an idea. We'll start maybe with the minis over here on the corner. Minis are what it says, very, very tiny hostas, and most of them don't get very big at all. Now, they're not used a lot in the garden unless you've got really a little centerpiece where you want to have it, or a fairy garden or something like that. They're really used more for containers. They'll take abuse. You can leave them in there all winter long, not water them, and they're fine as they can be.
And they'll still come right back?
They'll come right back, and they'll come back thicker the next year. So, and most people overlook that in container plants. If you'll use 2 or 3 perennials, even combinations of hostas, all you got to add is a couple of annuals, and you got season-long color, with the foliage and the hostas. So it's really a great plant to complement your patio sets, or patio plantings, or in the garden. If you've got a really dark area, some like this one we've got right here, Designer Jeans. This is so bright yellow.
It is.
And it's Designer Jeans, Genes.
Okay.
Now, this is one of the first that actually had a red petiole, which you can see here, maybe on the side. And flower arrangers like this a lot because it really stands out with the yellow and the red. So it's a great hosta. Another one here, this is probably my favorite blue. This is Hadspin blue. As it matures, it will be a steel blue and holds that color all the way to fall. Absolutely magnificent, and it multiplies rapidly. This one is one of my favorites, High Society, with the yellow variegation in the center. It's also an excellent, holds that color, doesn't fade in the heat. It's really, really a good one. This one's been real popular the last couple of years, Remember Me, because also it changes a little color and becomes a little lighter as the season progresses, but it's a stunning, stunning hosta. And then you have all the ones that are different. Okay. Like this one right here. This one was Hosta of the Year a couple of years ago. Curly Fries. Curly Fries. It first comes out in the season brilliant yellow and then greens up as the season progresses. So it's really a very neat hosta. Okay. And it's good for the front of the garden, and of course you use the taller ones in the back. And this is one right here that I like, Ivory Coast, for a tall one to have some darker colors in front of it. Really stands out and lightens up your shady areas. And this one right here, this is the Mama Jamma of hostas. This one is Empress Wu. It gets very large. I've seen these in pictures up to 4 feet tall, and that's just the foliage. That's not the flower. They'll be 8 feet wide and have leaves on them that are 15, 16 inches across. So it's huge hosta. And this year, I haven't been able to get any. There's a variegated one called, are you ready? Woohoo. So,
woohoo.
You know, they name these things so that, you know, they're attractive to women and some to men, you know. I had to have Komodo dragon.
Yes,
I had to have Captain Kirk.
Oh,
okay, yeah, that's a hosta.
I like that name.
I had to have Jurassic Park.
Oh, okay.
You know, but there's so many of them that have names that, you know, you could care less what they look like. You just want them because of their names. So these are great, great perennials that come back year after year.
How many varieties are there?
Oh gosh, probably 4,000 or better.
That's a lot.
Yeah,
That is a lot.
at the Botanic Garden plant sale, we'll have 208 varieties and maybe more by the time the plant sale gets here.
Okay.
But we've got all shapes, sizes, colors, and the really neat thing is so many of them will sport additional ones. I've got right now some Francis, which is normally a very light white edge around it. It's sporting solid white leaves. So, and hopefully it'll have some green in it to support that. So, but you know, my luck, it won't. It'll fold. But it's really, really cool to see these unique color patterns come out. One time I had a sage, which looks very much like this, that turned out solid yellow, and it was great. And one that even was half yellow, half green. You know, it did that for the first 4 or 5 leaves, and then it would get out of it, and did that every year. So, kind of unique to watch them. Yeah.
Okay. Now we're talking about hostas, of course. Let's talk about voles.
Oh, voles.
Anytime you talk about hostas, people think about voles.
That's right. Okay. You know, they will pick out your most expensive hosta and then work right down the price list.
Okay.
You know, they like to tunnel under mulch, or they like to follow mole runs, okay? So that's what the first things you want to do. Avoid mulch, okay? That way they don't like to get out in the open, okay? So if you'll avoid that, and then we'll show you in a little while how to use some soil perfector, which is basically a ground up rock to prevent voles from getting access to the pip and destroying your hostas. So there's some ways to do that, and we'll show you how here shortly.
Okay. What about any other diseases that we need to know about?
Well, there are a few diseases that hit them. There was one that came out a few years ago, Virus X, and it manifests itself differently in different hostas. Some you wouldn't know it even had it. Some it would cause them to be very corrugated. Some they would get streaks or ripples in them, so it varied from each one. But it was only moved by man, basically. If you got the disease on your cutters cutting off, you could pass it to another one. It did not seem to appear to be spread by insects. And the nice thing was, you throw it, dig it up, throw it away, you can plant another one back in there, because it doesn't seem to move back into the roots in any way. Okay. So
that's good news.
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, there were half a dozen new cultivars entered that actually were just Virus X mutations of old ones. So once they figured that out, they weren't cultivars anymore. So yeah, pretty cool things. And one thing you can also do is, some hostas, like, and this is one right here, doesn't like to produce pups, little ones off the edge. And you see these right here are already doing it to my right. So what you can do is, when the pip comes up early in the spring, you can just see it, take a razor blade and make an X in it. Cut through that basal plate that you'll see right there near the ground level, and you'll get one to come off of each of those. So you get 4 pips instead of 1. That's called raw sizing, and it's a real good way to thicken a hosta quicker that's not cooperating.
Okay, so razor blade, make an X.
They make an X in through that bud, just like you're cutting right straight down into it. Yeah.
Okay. Now, will these hostas be available to the public?
By jingy, I'm glad you asked that too. Okay, yes, all of these are grown by our volunteers at the Memphis Botanic Garden. We have created a little volunteer nursery over there that's 100% run by, and done by volunteers. And every dollar that's spent there goes back to education. So it's great. This year we'll have over 700 varieties of plants and about 18,000 perennials. So, and a lot of natives.
All right, so tell the folks to come on out. If they're hostaholics, there'll be plenty of hostas for them, right? All right, Mr. Jim, we appreciate that good information.
Thank you very much, Chris.
Thank you. There are a number of gardening events going on in the next couple of weeks. Here are just a few that might interest you. All right, Mr. D, let's talk a little bit about soil prep. So where you want to start with that?
The best place to start with soil prep is by getting a soil test. That's the best thing, you know. Don't guess soil test. The best time to do that is now, if you haven't already done it. It's always best to do it in the fall if you're you know, under ideal conditions. And the main reason that you want to do it early is because you're going to get a recommendation on lime, probably. If your soils tend to be slightly acidic in our neck of the woods, and most garden vegetables need a relatively high pH between 6 and 6.5, and it takes lime a couple of months, 2 or 3 months, to bring the soil pH down. Now, with that being said, if you haven't done that, go on and let's do a soil test now, and then you go on and plant your garden, and it's best to put lime out now than not to put it out at all, if your soil needs it. Now, the only time I've seen cases where you did not need lime, you know, once every 3 years, 2 or 3 years, is if you scatter your garden ashes regularly, you know, ashes from your fireplace or from your fire pit out in your garden spot. But you need to remove vegetation from you know, where you're going to plant your garden, and you can do that with a tiller. You can do it with you know, chemicals if you want to, or a hoe, or you know, something like that. You need to remove any unwanted vegetation and get in there and till the soil. Do not do that when it's wet. And you know, clods are, if your soil has a you know, fairly high level of clay, and if you can pick up a wad of it and squeeze it and water comes out of it, you don't need to be out there working in it. You know, give it a little bit of time and let it dry out. Because those clods, when they form, if you work the soil when it's too wet, they will stay with you throughout the growing season, and you know, they don't just dissolve, unfortunately, and it interferes with the soil seed to root, the seed to soil contact and root to soil contact. So make sure your soil is dry enough to work, you know, when you get out there and work it. Till it, you know, work it up. If you want to try to garden a little bit earlier than normal, you can throw ridges up in the fall, 6 to 8 inches tall, you know, or pull ridges up with a rake. You can do all these with hand tools, and that will allow the soil to dry out a little bit quicker, and it'll be a little bit warmer in the springtime. You know, if you're gardening on ridges, you can do that. You know, back in the old days, we would go in there with a breaking plow and break it, and then we would disc it, and then we would drag a harrow across it, and then lay out the rows, and you know, put the seed in the ground, and that, all of those things could be spread out over months. You could break it in the fall, you know, disc it in the spring, or you could do all of that at once. So there's a lot of different ways to prepare your soil. The soils that we have in this area here in the Mid-South, for the most part, tend to be pretty good soils. We do have some soils that may be a little high in clay content. If you have a Sharkey, a gumbo, you know, bless your heart, you do need to amend that with organic matter and maybe some sand and things like that. But if you have a silt loam, and you can look at, there's a soil survey in every county, in every state of the union. And you can go and you can, if you don't know what type soil you have, you may think you know what type soil you have, but if you go look at your soil survey, you'll be able to determine exactly the name and you know, what type of soil that you have. But a lot of people in this area automatically assume that they have too much clay in their soil. Clay is a very valuable component of soil. It helps in the water holding capacity of the soil. So you need some clay.
Helps hold nutrients.
And the only place that we have really the Sharkey soils and the gumbos really are in the river bottoms. And if you happen to have a house that was built in a river bottom, then you may have a very heavy clay soil. But most of the soils are silt loams, you know, wind deposited loess type soils. And they're just ideal for growing things. And if you don't believe that, look at the size of the trees that you have growing around your yards and in the neighborhood and things like that.
Right. I actually heard Mr. Jim mention that before in one of your talks. I mean, you have to have a little clay in the soil,
clay is
right?
good.
Yeah,
clay is good. The main thing is that you want to grow plants that enjoy that.
Right.
There are a lot of plants that don't like that thing that we sell in the nurseries, and so a lot of people fail with plants just because it needs to be up elevated. It needs a much sandier soil, drain much faster. Percolation rate through our clay is very low, very slow. And when you dig a hole, and particularly if you over improve it by putting lots of what you think is good stuff in there, it just becomes a soup bowl of water, and then the plant just drowns basically.
Good point.
Yeah, and you need to be careful about, many times with our landscaping and things like that, we might interfere with a drainage. You need natural drainage, and if you have somehow set your, using beds or by setting up berms and things like that so that you hold water, then that's not a good thing. So you need to allow the water. Don't allow water to stand, basically,
right.
if you can help it. And if you do have water standing where your garden is, then I would ditch it, or try to pick some way to get that water on off there so it doesn't stand. A lot of plants don't like wet feet.
Or plant rice.
yeah, plant rice. Rice does okay. Yeah, but a lot of plants, most plants don't like wet feet. Cypress trees do fine, and rice.
Right, and definitely a lot of your vegetables don't like wet feet either.
They do not like wet feet. They do not, and that. But if you do all that, soil test. Now, if you haven't soil tested, then you can put. I hate to do rules of thumb, but there is a rule of thumb. If you want to put a garden, and you can garden now. I mean, you could have been gardening all winter. There are cool season vegetables that grow, onions and radishes and things like that. It's not too early to start gardening right now. However, there are a lot of vegetables that you don't want to put out until after the average date of the last killing frost.
Right.
And that's getting close. It won't be long, and it's going to be time to go with everything. But rule of thumb, in the absence of a soil test, use 2 to 3 pounds of 6-12-12 fertilizer or its equivalent per 100 square feet of garden area. If you haven't done the soil test and you want to garden pretty quickly, you can put that out there, broadcast it evenly over the soil surface, incorporate it into the top 6 inches of the soil, and you'll be okay. But get a soil test.
Get a soil test.
And that way you'll know whether or not you did too much or not enough.
All right. Well, appreciate that, Mr. D. Always soil tests. All right. Thank you much.
Okay, I'm going to show you how to properly plant a hosta and hopefully protect it from voles at the same time. The first thing, when you get a hosta, you want to dig your hole about twice as wide as the container. Then loosen this. You don't have to go deep, about 3 inches or so, and incorporate some good organic matter. Hostas are not deep-rooted plants. Then right in the center of your prepared area, you want to dig out just like a cone shape like this, okay? Then we're going to take a product. This one, there's Soil Perfector, there's MoldGo, there's a whole bunch of products out there, and just dump it right in the hole like that and pack it up against the sides like this. We're going to get a little bit more there, get in there. Now what this does, gives you a protective barrier, because when the voles are in there, they don't have any place to push that. So we're going to make this cone like so. Then we'll remove this hosta from the pot just like this, spread the roots out a little bit, force it down in the center, and then we're going to come back again with a little more on the top of it like so to protect the pip. Okay, then bring you a little light mulch on top of it. The hosta's done, and you got pretty good protection against voles.
All right, this is our Q&A segment. Mr. Jim, you jump in there with us, all right?
I got it. Let's go.
All right, here's our first via email. How do you remove black sooty mold from crepe myrtle bark? And this is from Kim via YouTube.
Well, the best thing to do is, if it bothers you, is just go out there with a soft brush, a little soapy water like Dawn detergent, and just scrub it off. You can use, I know people that have used pressure sprayers. If you cut the pressure way down, not destroy the bark, you can do that. But if you're the sooty mold telling you that you've got a problem,
yes,
you got to address that problem, and then the sooty mold will go away.
That's right.
You've either got scale, either crepe myrtle bark scale or some other type scale, or aphids in the top of that tree.
That's right.
The honeydew's dripping down, and the sooty mold's growing on it.
That's right.
So fix the insect problem, you won't have the sooty mold problem.
Good point.
Treat the problem, not the symptom.
Right.
All right, here's next. It's actually a letter. Okay. Open this up for you. What herbs can I plant that will come back every spring? And this is from Kay Andersonville. You have any suggestions for Ms. Kay?
Well, okay, a lot is going to depend on her soil and soil conditions and drainage.
Okay.
Rosemary, many of the lavenders are hardy perennials in theory, okay?
In theory, okay.
But particularly around here, our warm summer nights, our slow drainage during the winter does a lot of these plants in. So I wouldn't plant 100 of them hoping to have them all come back.
Okay.
You know, if do your proper soil prep, I like to mix a little bark in it with it, pine bark, because it's got calcium in it, tends to raise your pH.
Okay.
Helps keep the soil separated so you get good drainage through it, have plenty of air. You know, and if they come back, hey, that's great. But one of the nice things about herbs is they're very inexpensive. They grow rapidly. So even if you plant a whole new bed of different herbs each year, you're not talking about a lot of money. And you'll get fresher herbs, won't have a woody old plant that you've got to do pruning on. You know, if it were me, I'd grow my own fresh ones or harvest them at Kroger, one of the two.
All right, so one of the two.
Yeah.
So we're talking about chives, oregano,
all
thyme.
those things. Yeah,
Okay.
basil.
Mint.
You know,
Right.
basil you want to watch because it doesn't like cool temperatures. It's not going to come back, but you know you can plant them every year. You know that's the neat thing. Now mint,
that's a good point.
You can plant it
Yeah,
once, and you're not going to have a problem.
Right,
It's going to
'cause
come back
it's gonna
with a
come back.
vengeance,
Yeah,
all over the
without a doubt.
neighborhood.
Yeah.
So.
What about rosemary? I mean,
Rosemary,
depending on the winter.
it depends on how. I think you'll have better luck growing them in containers than you will in the ground.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. But definitely good drainage. The bark. Putting bark. Okay.
Love pine bark. You know, it's one of the best. You know, Mother Nature lets all these trees and stuff fall to the ground, and like, oh, gee, what a good plan. You know, so that's what I try to use.
All right.
Yeah.
Makes sense. All right. So hope that helps you out, Ms. Kay. Here's our next via email. I have some daffodils growing all over a hill by an old house. How do daffodils get scattered naturally? Are there bulbs dug up and moved by animals? And this is from Miss Elizabeth in Byhalia, Mississippi. So how do they get scattered naturally is the first question. And then are the bulbs dug up and moved by animals? Interesting question.
I'm pretty sure your dog's not transplanting them, okay?
Right.
Typically they come up from seed, okay? As they produce seed over the years, those will flow different areas. You know, at some point, probably there was an old homestead there and they planted a few bulbs,
Sure.
okay? And then they just begin to multiply. They'll multiply there in the clump and usually pile on top of each other. But they'll increase that way, and then usually you'll have seed that will flow away and they'll pop up elsewhere. So that's primarily the way they spread.
Okay.
I go along with that. And one thing that may take place from time to time is if some cultivation goes on in areas close to home sites, because I've seen like it scatters down a road or down a field, and I wonder if a bulb got hung on a disc or a breaking flower. Some man mechanically could have moved some of those bulbs accidentally down through there. But for the most part, I'd say seed.
Yeah.
Okay. And your dog is not doing it, right?
I'm pretty sure he's not digging them up and transplanting.
I don't think squirrels dig them
Now,
up and move
I
them.
did have a Labrador one time that if I put a little bacon grease on the ground, he'd dig a hole for me. But, you know, I haven't been able to get him to plant anything.
You can't plant anything?
Looking for the rest of that hog.
All right, so there you have it, Miss Elizabeth. All right, here's our next viewer email. Can you tell me what this bush is?
Yes, I
I
can.
bet you Mr. Jim knows what that is.
That's a quince.
It's quince.
Yep.
That's right.
Got little thorns all over. Beautiful plant. Early spring, flowers before the leaves come out usually. One of the prettiest ones is there's a variety called Toyo Nishiki that blooms white, pink, and red on the same plant. I have one in my yard, and people stop to ask me what it is because it's really stunning. But there are some new doubles that are dwarfs that have no thorns. In oranges and reds and whites. They're just spectacular plants. Some of them produce the apple for the quince jelly, Okay. There are most of the newer varieties are not fruit producing.
Okay.
But there's still some out there. So it's a great plant, you know, particularly it's got so many thorns on it. I say this is one of the plants. I have a list of plants you plant under your daughter's window. This is one of them.
And this is one with the thorns.
So
Surrounded by barberry.
How about that? But you know, the plant produces a lot of stems as well.
It does. It does. And it needs selective pruning.
Okay,
you know?
so I was going to ask you about pruning.
Right. Each year, you know, go in, take out 3 to 5 of the oldest canes in there. They're going to pop and go straight up through it and refill it, and then you'll have more flowers next year. Start setting its flowers in late July and August, so do not prune it after the 1st of July. Got to be done right after it blooms.
All right. But if you plant it under your daughter's window, don't prune it.
Don't prune it at all.
Don't prune it all. All right, Mr. Jim, Mr. D, it was fun.
Hey, thank you. Appreciate you asking.
All right. Remember, we love to hear from you. Send us an email or letter. The email address is familyplot@wkno.org, and the mailing address is Family Plot, 7151 Cherry Farms Road, Cordova, Tennessee 38016. Or you can go online to familyplotgarden.com. That's all we have time for today. Thanks for joining us. If you would like more information on hostas or getting your soil ready for planting, visit familyplotgarden.com. We have links to extension publications about these and other gardening topics. I'm Chris Cooper. Be sure to join us next week for the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South. Be safe.